My name is Kyle, but for the rest of the day, I am officially baby brother. And he calls me baby brother because I'm big brother, right? And so he knows if he messes with me too much, I can still put him in his place. So, it's a whole thing, but I'll take it. My work sits at the intersection really of business operations, investment, and public systems. And it's interesting for this question about understanding wealth creation, really a macroeconomic perspective as a foundation for the rest of the day. I wanted to get my PhD in that in the pandemic. We're McDonald's franchisees, we'd sold our business. I was like, let me go back to school and do a thing. Then I realized that's expensive and I like making more money, so I decided to stay in the family business for a while. But one of the things that I've learned is that outcomes don't change because we really try hard. They change because we get creative, because systems either open doors or they keep them shut for people. So my goal this morning is simple. I want to help us share a common picture of how wealth is created in a region. And we want to and if we see the same system, the rest of today will make more sense as we're having the conversations. And so I have slides. I'm going to move this a bit so people can see it. When we talk about social outcomes, oftentimes we talk about social determinants like social determinants of health. But social determinants really are a function of socioeconomic status. When people have access to an educational system that will improve educational attainment, their income improves, their occupation is one that can produce the kind of lifestyle, those socioeconomic, social outcomes will improve. At the bottom rung is wealth and power. Your leverage here is really here in this wealth and power space. As we go to the next slide, in my back of the napkin math suggests that there's somewhere between 200 and 300 billion dollars in investment. That's not economic output, that is investment that occurs on an annual basis here in the LA region. About half of that, roughly 50% of that, comes from government making investments. About another third, roughly 30%, happens from anchor institutions like pensions and like philanthropic organizations also investing here locally. And only about 20% of that happens from private institutions, publicly traded companies, et cetera, investing here locally. So really, when we talk about that wealth lever at the bottom that has the potential to improve outcomes for communities, it is the decisions that are made by people in this room that have the ability to transform that opportunity. So if you can go to the next slide. And so here, that's a thing. So here we have these cogs. This one over here on my right, the green area represents what we'll call the wealth creation cycle. And we wanted to start with the wealth creation cycle because it creates a framework by which businesses can then operate. But it starts with human capital. If you have people who are skilled, they'll have ideas. Those ideas can turn into innovation. That innovation will attract money from investments, and those investments will create infrastructure that will allow businesses to work and thrive, right? That thing, it has cogs on the inside because it turns, and it turns slowly. When there's an infrastructure project here, it goes on the inside. We call this circle on the inside the value creation cycle. So the value creation cycle is essentially every government project, every business in the region working independently and sometimes interdependently, and almost always interdependently really, to create value for and with themselves. As we go to this circle over here, these are all of those little projects, some of those big projects, some of those large anchor institutions, all cogs on a wheel, all working interdependently to turn and create the economy, to create movement in the economy in the real way. But they also interplay with this wheel. This wheel is turning because this wheel is turning, but these wheels are also turning because this wheel is turning. On the outside, we still see cogs because there are factors outside of the region that also come into play. And so if we think about the impact of something like COVID-19 or the impact of federal government policy coming in, those also have a significant impact. But essentially, the rules that the firms play, that govern how the firms play, are all created here. Also, the investment decisions that create the lanes or the streets that we ride on for logistics and or the internet that we all use, all of that, those decisions happen here, but those projects are running here in the inside circle. So you go on to the next slide, please. And so as we think about those two cogs, oftentimes we don't think about leakage, right? When we think about wealth and we think about leakage, there's really three. There are three ways where leakage, we're identified where leakage happens. So leakage happens geographically, but also leakage happens intra-regionally. When we talk about geographic leakage, a lot of what we're talking about is an example Kareem made earlier, where LAWA went from 12% to 30% local small businesses participating in procurement decisions. That means they more than doubled the number of local small businesses that get to participate. Oftentimes in the previous example, where we have about 12%, what you'll have is in a project like a remodel at LAX, you would see somewhere in and around $20 billion allocated, but less than 10%, or in this case 12%, is going to businesses that are here local. Well, a lot of those, the 88%, are publicly traded companies, which means the wealth that gets created leaves the region, right? And so yes, the people who are doing the work oftentimes are here, but the wealth leaves the region. When you get to 30%, that means more of the wealth that is getting created stays within the region. But when we talk about intra-regional leakage, a lot of what we are talking about is the South LA problem, right? Is that the people who own those businesses often don't live in South Los Angeles. And so yes, you might have impact, like all the pollution impact of LAWA, which stays in neighborhoods like this, but the people that own those businesses don't. So yes, you might get more value here in the region, but you still might have the same amount that accrues to communities like this. A lot of the conversation here that we'll be having here today is about how do we accrue more value in spaces like this? And how do we do it in a way that participates with the groups of people who are here, right? Oftentimes when we create value in neighborhoods like this, we create gentrification. So the people who were here do not get to participate. It takes a significant amount of commitment and a significant amount of creativity to create solutions that will create value where leakage does not skip over communities like this. And I'll give you an example. We have another one, participation leakage. Oftentimes people are disincentivized from ever participating. My favorite example of participation leakage is, we've been having a lot of conversations recently with Chief Mark Hartwig, and he was the fire chief of Santa Barbara County. Up until recently, he retired last Monday. But in one of those conversations, we were talking about a story of a guy who was a fireman. He made about $120,000 a year. With overtime, he made about $150,000. In 2018, he went to buy a house. That house, he put an offer on multiple homes. He didn't get any. Come to find out that a lot of the homes that he was trying to purchase in the neighborhoods that he can afford were bought all cash. A lot of those all cash offers were made by firms that were owned by places like BlackRock, right? BlackRock probably got a lot of that capital for those funds from a pension, like the pension that he paid into. It doesn't make sense that the guy would pay into a pension that would essentially disincentivize his ability to participate in wealth creation for his family. When we create solutions and we are stewarding pensions and we're stewarding the money from government, we get to create creative solutions that allow people, that incentivize people to participate fully. And so when I think about that example, it really hits home as to why this work is so important. Because somebody who is ensuring that I stay out of the hospital, somebody who's ensuring that my house doesn't go up in the case that we have a catastrophic fire, I want that person to feel comfortable and safe in their home. I want them to be invested in the community here. What we have found is that a lot of those firemen, they don't live here, they come here for their shift and then they go to Iowa because they can afford to live. That is participation leakage. And we want those folks participating with us here too. One thing I want you to know is leakage typically is not about bad intent, right? We often don't intend to create those, to create leakages in this kind of a way. But our systems are historically set up to reinforce who participates. And it's just like laws. If a bad law gets put on the books or a law that was appropriate gets put on the books, until someone takes it off, it stays. Same thing with the entire system. It's just the aggregation of those laws and those rules. So if we are to get to alignment, and Kareem talked a lot about alignment, so does Stephen talk a lot about alignment. It happens through the choices that are made here, through the policy, the rules choices, through, of course, the procurement choices, but also the investment choices, the who gets funded, the where they get funded, the why they get funded. These choices don't decide one project, they decide for all of us who gets to participate. They also choose where value lands over time. If you can go to the next slide, please. All right. And final, I just close with this. Social outcomes improve when opportunity improves. The opportunity improves when the value creation environment is aligned to expand opportunity and reduce leakage. The value creation cycle strengthens when the wealth creation environment is aligned to produce and retain wealth. And the wealth creation environment is shaped and aligned by the decisions of the people in this room. All right. And so next, I think next is Ted.